ratio. Could be that there are professor relationships that are a bit more dynamic because they might know everyone in their lecture hall. So there are advantages to the smaller school. A larger school, which is about 10,000 or more, very often publics, and then some larger privates that might have a larger swath of majors available to students. It could be that you're able to be more anonymous if you want to be that person who maybe sits in the back row of the class, doesn't feel like they have to call and raise their hands all the time, be called on by professors. However, just so you know, whatever college you go to, once you delve into a major, your class sizes get smaller and smaller. So your introductory level classes at any school might be large, and very often those larger classes have smaller discussion groups. But once you have a major declared, tends to be junior year, senior year, classes get smaller and smaller. Medium-sized school might have the best of both. So not too big, not too small, 5,000 to 10,000. I'm curious from your perspective, give me some examples of smaller schools. Put in the chat box, what do you think are examples of schools that are 5,000 or fewer undergraduates?
And everyone, you have a chance right now. Everyone, please use this great opportunity to go into the chat and to make this as interactive as possible. Michael, I'm just going to quickly put everyone on mute and then you can unmute yourself. Give me just one moment. Got it. Okay, so you can unmute yourself. Let's keep going.
Perfect. So far you're giving great examples, right? MIT, Cooper Union, Oberlin, liberal arts colleges. So a liberal arts college is a school where the undergraduate experience is the primary foundation of the education. So Scripps, Vassar, Oberlin, thinking of schools like Williams, Swarthmore, Amherst, Middlebury, those are liberal arts colleges. Those tend to be smaller. A school that's very specialized, like a school like Cooper Union, they have art, they have architecture, they have engineering. That's it. Those three departments also very small. MIT is just under 5,000. It's about 4,000. So it's not as tiny, but still a small school. Give me examples of what do you think are larger schools? What do you think is 10,000 and higher?
Mm.
Stony Brook, NYU, Michigan. Good. Okay, good. So very often it'll be publics, UCLA. NYU is the largest private school in America. It's about 24,000 undergrads. So these larger schools, they might have more majors being offered, more courses being offered. So a random department might have many professors as opposed to just a few professors. The larger schools might have undergraduate colleges like liberal arts, like business, engineering, nursing, the arts. So there might be a more diverse array of offerings. A liberal arts college is going to have humanities, social sciences, natural sciences, foreign languages, but not necessarily engineering, not necessarily nursing, and other specialized professional types of programs. Awesome. So what do you think are examples of medium size? What do you think is in the 5,000 to 10,000 range? Not too big, not too small. Feel free to put it in the chat. And definitely feel free to show me your faces if you'd like. I know some people just came on the past couple minutes. Would love to see as many faces as possible. Okay, some Ivy Leagues might be in the 5,000 to 10,000. Penn's a bit bigger, Cornell's a bit bigger. Schools like Washington University in St. Louis, Emory, Johns Hopkins, those are medium-sized schools. Okay, something to think about when it comes to the college search process is the idea of a liberal arts college versus a research university. So a research university will have undergraduates and also graduate programs. They might have a law school, medical school, business program to get an MBA. Liberal arts college, the sole focus is on the undergraduate experience. So classes are typically taught by full-time professors. A research university might have a teacher assistant who's going for their PhD teaching an undergraduate class. You might have an adjunct professor. That might be a little bit more common. Um, Liberal arts college is a little bit more of an intimate community of learners. A research university might have, in some instances, more school spirit, might have more of the fraternity and sorority life, might have more of the football, basketball games as part of their experience. Something else you might want to think about is the idea of location. So the idea of an urban school, which is very much enmeshed within a city, or a suburban school, which could be right outside of a big city, or a rural campus where really the campus is kind of the only game in town, not much in civilization nearby. Who could throw out examples of schools that are in urban environments? Northeastern, perfect, in Boston. Cooper Union, New York City, University of Chicago, NYU, good. Boston University, schools like George Washington University, Manhattan University in the Bronx, Columbia. Good. What are examples of schools that are in a more suburban? So it's outside of a major city, but it has its own campus dynamic. I'd say Stony Brook, not far from New York City. I would say Tufts outside of Boston. Good. Wellesley outside of Boston. I would say Dartmouth, UVA might be a little bit more in the remote. Cornell also a bit more rural. Same with Binghamton, I'd say a bit more rural. So the idea of a Binghamton, a Cornell, is they're not right outside a major city. It's kind of like the only game in town really is that college campus that really comprises a major part of the culture in that surrounding neighborhood. So some students might learn best in an urban environment where they feel like there's a lot of stimulation in the town around them. There might be access to more internship opportunities. Could be there more hospitals around if you want to do research, for example, volunteerism. Could be some students thrive in a more rural environment. For those who might love the camp, whether it's sleepaway camp type of vibe, and the idea where the campus is the game in town, that is really your home school, your home location. For a lot of people, that is the preferred. And a suburban could be the best of both worlds, kind of like that medium size. The idea of a suburban, it is outside of a major city. The campus is its own enclave, but you can easily get to the city back and forth. I'm thinking of Brandeis University and Tufts University right outside of Boston. The campuses are very defined as their own campus spaces, but to get to Boston, to go to a restaurant, to go to a cultural outing is very doable. So whereas Boston University is right enmeshed within the city streets of Boston and the T, which is their train, goes right through campus on Commonwealth Avenue, Brandeis and Tufts, you're not going to see big trains going through the middle of campus. Someone who goes to NYU will see their subway stops throughout the 8th Street Yellow Line, and you'll see the blue line, the red line. That's not going to be the case in a suburban school. I'm thinking of like a Sarah Lawrence in Bronxville. So it's outside of New York City. The campus has its own space, and you don't necessarily feel like you're far away from civilization. So some people might learn best in a more urban environment. Some people might learn best in a rural. Some people in between a suburban. Some people might do well anywhere. So you want to know yourself. Do you want a small, medium, or large school? Or maybe you could thrive in all three. Do you want a liberal arts college or research university? Maybe you do well in both. Do you want something that's urban or suburban or rural? Maybe any of the three would work for you. That's something to think about. Another consideration to weigh is the idea of public and private. So a public school could be in-state or it can be out-of-state. So you're from New York, in-state could be the CUNY system, which is for the 5 boroughs of New York City. So examples are Baruch, Hunter, Brooklyn, City College, College of Staten Island, or the SUNY system, which could be anywhere in New York State, Geneseo, Binghamton, Albany, Stony Brook, Buffalo, New Paltz, Cortland, Oneonta. Those are SUNY schools. Those schools, the price tag will inevitably be a lot cheaper than privates or out-of-state publics. Out-of-state publics are schools that the price tag might be halfway in between, let's say, of an in-state and a private. But the difference is that an out-of-state public, they want your New York tuition dollars to be more expensive. They might not have as much money to offer you as a private school, which might have a higher endowment. So examples of out-of-state publics are Michigan, Wisconsin, University of Florida, University of Maryland, Penn State. These are all out-of-state publics. The price tag could be in the 60s. They could give scholarships also, but they might not necessarily get it down to the Binghamton or Albany level. Private schools tend to be around 90,000 these days, give or take a few thousand. Examples of private schools, the Ivy League, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Columbia, Penn, Dartmouth, Brown, New York University, Boston University, Chicago, Washington University, and St. Louis. These are all private schools. So when it comes to the admission process, you want to think about having a real conversation as a family with regards to price tag. What is that number that parents are willing to pay for an education for their child? Now, the financial aid process is definitely something that's separate from admissions, but it should be something to think about as hand in hand when it comes to the admission process. Is the affordability option, and what is that number that parents can pay, and perhaps what are the numbers of loans that you are willing to take out? There have been many articles about loans and exorbitant loans being detrimental to students, and that is true. There's nothing wrong with a small loan to take out every year. Why? It builds good credit when students are able to pay it back, and also it puts the onus on the student to take their education seriously. So by taking out loans, it might cause them to party less. It might cause them to prioritize their academics from day one. So the federal government recommendation is no more than $5,000 a year for a total of $20,000. I wouldn't shy away from taking out $5,000 a year over the course of the 4 years. unless you know for sure you want to go to graduate school, law, medical school, whatever that might be, in which case go to the most expensive terminal degree that you're going to get. Someone's going into business, someone's going to engineering, they might not necessarily need that graduate degree, and maybe paying a little bit more for the undergraduate experience might be a more realistic thing to consider. But if someone knows they want to go into pre-med, for example, I always say think 8 years. What's your plan for 8 years? Is it to break the bank for 4 years undergrad? Then there's nothing left for medical school, which is typically a lot more expensive. Or if finances are a factor, maybe you have the in-state option for 4 years, do the best you can academically, have great MCATs, make yourself as marketable as possible, and go to Harvard Medical School, pay that money for the graduate degree. All right. Um, Next thing to think about, I'm just seeing a question here about, does needing financial aid hurt your chances of getting to certain colleges? Leanne, that's a great question. There are some colleges that are what you call need aware, which means they might take into consideration what your family's financial situation is. A lot of schools are need blind, which means they won't even look into the finances when it comes to the admission decision. Now, if admitted, you can appeal for more financial aid. But for the schools that are need blind, they're not going to penalize you for needing financial aid when it comes to this process. I'll go over financial aid a bit more later on in the presentation. Okay. But the idea of looking into in-state publics, out-of-state publics, and privates is a way to group those three into different types of categories. Something else you want to think about when it comes to the college search process is majors. You're paying for academics first and foremost, above the fraternity sorority party. You're paying for academics above the football field. You're paying for academics above the beautiful dorms. First and foremost, you're going to college for an education. You want to make sure whatever college you go to has the academics you're looking for. It sounds obvious, right? When I used to work in admissions at NYU, we used to get questions all the time from students. I really want to go to NYU, but how can I study fashion here? And I'd say, we don't offer fashion. It's not a possibility. FIT offers fashion, Parsons offers fashion, NYU doesn't. I've heard someone say, I want to go to Cooper Union to major in English. Nope, no such thing. They don't offer English as a major. So the idea of actually looking into the schools that has what you're looking for makes a lot of sense. If you want to study undergraduate engineering, small liberal arts colleges, for the most part, won't really offer that. So you want to make sure if you have a specialty that you're considering, that you're looking to the right schools that makes the most sense for you to study at that institution. All right. A lot of the larger schools will have undergraduate colleges, so they'll separate the different academic departments into these separate spheres. So College of Arts and Science might be one, but then there's also a business school, a nursing school, arts programs of some kind. These are different things to think about at those larger schools. Okay, I'm going to go over some different deadline terms. I think it's important to understand what these terms mean. Who could tell me what early decision is? Feel free to put it inside the chat. As you're doing that, Aaron mentions 4+1 programs. A number of schools will have the idea of a combined undergraduate where you do the engineering afterwards at somewhere else, or it could be 3-2 also. So that's something you could look into also for various schools. Okay, ED is binding. Yes, committing to a school early. Good. 100% decided to go to that school. Great. So a lot of you might consider colleges that have an early decision deadline, which means for the most part, it's around November 1st. There are a couple schools that have November 15th. Early decision means you want to put your eggs into that one basket. You know, that's your first choice school. And if offered admission, you're going to go there, which means that prior to applying, if finances are a consideration, you're doing your financial aid research. Colleges have on their financial aid website something called a net price calculator, which is basically a calculator that helps determine what an aid package could theoretically look like based on prior year parental income. Early decision means that you've done your research. You've either visited this school, you may have done a virtual tour. A lot of these schools will have virtual tours on their admission websites. Maybe you've spoken to students who are there. You've been in touch with the admission officer. You really got to know that school very, very well. And you know that if offered admission, you're excited to go there. You're not applying anywhere else. Okay. Question about if there are ways to back out of ED. If you are expecting a certain type of financial aid package based on the net price calculator, and the college gives you significantly less, you can back out of it. You're not getting arrested. However, I could tell you emotionally, it's very tough for a student to have gotten into their first choice school and then not to be able to go. So you really want to be certain that financially that school can theoretically work for you with what the financial aid package could look like. When it comes to early decisions, students tend to find out in mid-December on or about the 15th. So you apply by November 1st. You tend to hear about 6 weeks later, December 15th. The decisions could be an acceptance, could be a denial, or you could be deferred into the regular decision pool, which means that they want to take a look at you within a much larger applicant pool. So early decision is a much smaller pool. Regular decision is the much larger pool. Give NYU as an example, my alma mater, 128,000 applications to NYU, but the early decision round's about 10,000. It's a lot smaller. So if they can't make a decision, they could theoretically defer you into the regular decision pool, want to see strong first semester grades, maybe see continued interest to see if this is a school you still want to go to. A number of schools also have something called early decision 2. What do you think that is? Feel free to put it in the chat. ED, but later. Okay, I'll go into that. Okay, so early decision 1, if you recall, is about a November 1st deadline, find out mid-December. Early decision 2 is something that a lot of private schools offer, not all. So Ivy League schools might have ED1, but none of them have ED2 as an example. ED2, something that is a January 1st deadline, could be January 3rd, January 5th, but it's typically early January. You find out by mid-February. And like with ED1, if admitted, it's binding. So you're withdrawing all your other applications. So whereas regular decision is also around a January 1st deadline, and they find out end of March in a much larger applicant pool, ED2, you find out in mid-February, much smaller pool. So someone might have a plan. I want to do NYU ED1. If admitted, I'm so excited to go there. But if I don't get in, I'm going to do BU ED2. And if admitted, I'm very excited to go there also. So it's almost like having a 1-2 punch of private schools that could be of interest to you, ED1, ED2. For the most part, ED2 is slightly more selective. Why do you think that is? Why would ED2 be slightly more competitive, harder to get into than ED1? They know it's not your first choice. Okay. Okay, I'm going to use University of Chicago as a classic example. ED1 kids were rejected. Good guess. Yep. University of Chicago is a top 10 school, right? They have an ED2. They're one of the few schools among their peer group that have an ED2. Who's applying to U Chicago ED2? Kids who may have tried for Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and early, they didn't get in, and they know that strategically waiting out the regular decisions is a little bit risky. So the idea is that ED2 gives you a slightly better chance of getting in. However, the quality of the applicant pool in ED2 might be a bit stronger than it was in ED1. Washington University in St. Louis is another example, also known as WashU. Their ED2 pool is seeing kids who maybe didn't get into Columbia Penn early. Those kids know strategically, I don't want to wait out the Ivies in regular where it's so much more competitive. I'm really excited about a WashU if I get in ED2. I'll give NYU as an example. NYU Stern School of Business, ED1 is very, very selective. Why is NYU Stern even more selective in ED2? Very often it's kids who didn't get into Wharton, and the quality of the applicant pool is ratcheted up. So the idea is that ED1 is selective, ED2 a bit more, and then regular is a whole other level of selectivity. Okay? Now, when it comes to early options, I mentioned ED1, I mentioned ED2. Who knows what early action is? Feel free to put that in the chat. Early, but not binding. Great. So early action, a lot of state schools will have a November 1st deadline as well. And they're basically wanting to see an early look at who's applying at an earlier deadline. So your chances, especially for publics, is a bit stronger if you do early action as opposed to regular decision. I tell students who apply to Michigan, November 2nd, forget about it. You lost your shot. You got to apply by November 1st, early action. And you could do multiple early action schools, but you can only do that one early decision, one school. And if you're admitted to that ED1 school, you withdraw those early actions. So early actions, you could do numerous state schools. I'll get to the question about private schools and EA in 1 second. So examples of early action schools are those publics: Michigan, Wisconsin, Indiana, University of Maryland, University of Wisconsin, Rutgers, Binghamton, they all have early action. You can do 4, 5, 6, 10 of those schools alongside an ED1 if you have a first choice private. If you don't have a first choice private, or you think the financials aren't going to work out to do an early decision, you don't have to do a private ED1. You can do just a bunch of early actions if you'd like. All right. There are private schools that have early action, and I see a question about REA, which I'll answer also. The private schools that have early action, there's University of Miami, there's Tulane, there's Northeastern. Brandeis is adding an early action this year. A lot of these schools that have early action also have ED1, ED2. That means they want to take a lot more kids in ED1, ED2 who are locked in than those who apply early action. They are more likely to defer from early action. What is a better way to get yourself into those early action privates? Demonstrating a lot of interest. That means visiting campus, doing a virtual tour. That means if an admission rep comes to your school for a college night or school visit, going to that session. That means being on the mailing list. I'm giving you all a homework assignment tonight. Google any school of interest and say Google Binghamton University admissions mailing list. It'll come up with an inquiry card, an online form, and you fill that out. Boom, you're on the mailing list. You just demonstrated interest. You should be doing this for all the schools in your list. Demonstrate interest by joining the mailing list for all the schools that you have on your list. So early action for the most part will be publics. There are a few privates who have early action, but those privates who have early action who also have ED1, ED2, they really prefer ED1, ED2 to give you a better chance. Okay? REA, so restrictive early action, is something uniquely offered at Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and Stanford. What these 4 schools are saying is we don't have early decision where you're bound. What we have is an opportunity to have a smaller applicant pool in early, but if you're admitted, you don't have to come to us. So the idea is that you still have some choice. Typically, if someone gets into Harvard, Yale, Princeton, or Stanford, they're going to end up going there and not go through the whole process of many applications. If you need to compare financial aid packages, though, to be able to get into Harvard early, maybe you'll get into Princeton regular and you could try to play off one against the other. But remember, these schools are the pretty well-endowed schools. So if Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford aren't giving you a lot of money, I don't think anyone else will. Right? So REA, restrictive early action, these schools are still very selective, still a single-digit admit rate. The difference between early and regular is pretty negligible at some of these schools. The other thing to know is that in early is where they're taking their hooked applicants. That might be a recruited athlete, that might be a legacy, that might mean someone who has a special connection to the university. So a lot of these schools are taking students through early, especially the restrictive early action. Okay. Question is it possible to get accepted for early decision, but the financial package is not affordable and rejected due to pricing? I mean, yes, it's possible that you can get accepted to an early decision school and they don't meet your financial need, at which point you're not bound. Prior to applying, I would do the net price calculator for all schools that you're considering applying to see what an aid package could theoretically look like. Question about Columbia, NYU. Columbia, NYU both have ED1. NYU also has ED2. Neither school has early action, neither school has restrictive early action. Okay. So when it comes to the admission deadlines, the biggest pool is regular decision. Regular decision is where the largest number of critical mass is coming from. So that is going to be from all 50 states, all countries. And the idea is that the state schools that have early action, you're getting a little bit of a heads up of a read to give yourself a better shot. Now, who should not do early action? If you are counting on November, December, SAT, ACT, early action is a little bit trickier. So my goal for all of you is to have all your testing done by October of senior year, so that early action November deadline or early decision November deadline, you're not counting on a result post that deadline. So that means you can theoretically create a chronology for yourself of different calendar timeline once take SAT, ACT. I'll get into standardized testing in a little bit. But the idea is for November 1st deadlines, early action, you want to meet those if possible. All right, so what are admission officers looking for when it comes to this admission process? First and foremost is your transcript. Transcript is your collection of courses and grades. So curricular rigor, the type of demand of the program you're taking within the context of what your high school offers, is very important to schools. If you're getting straight A's without taking a single honors or AP class, and you want an Ivy League school, it's not going to happen, right? They're looking to see from the most selective schools, they're taking the most competitive curriculum at what your high school has to offer. Admission officers know that no two high schools are the same. Some schools might be IB, International Baccalaureate. Some schools might be an AP school. Some schools might not offer AP or IB, and they want to see that you're taking the highest level within honors or advanced courses. So curricular rigor is very important. Grades are very important. A lot of colleges will care about upward trends. Maybe you got B's freshman year and you became an A student sophomore year. So look to see what your story is. What happened that freshman year? Maybe you had a rough sophomore year because you had surgery or you had a death in the immediate family. These are things they pay attention to as well because they're doing a holistic review. So holistic review means they're not just looking at your score and grade saying yes or no, they're reading into your story. Now, if you're applying to a school that typically wants straight A's and you have straight B's, it doesn't matter what your story is. You can't say for 3 years, I have different stories for you, right? So the idea is that if there's an excuse because something happened one semester, that's one thing, but you can't say I was a B student for 3 years, but really have the mind of a straight A student. You didn't really prove your worth during those first 3 years. So when it comes to transcript, it's important to know that your curricular choices are important. So that means taking the right challenging program that matches your intellectual acumen. If you're someone who belongs in AP classes, you should be taking AP classes, but you shouldn't be taking BC Calc or C Physics if you're not a strong math science student, right? You shouldn't be taking AP English, AP European History student if you're not a strong reader or writer. So you have to be able to take the program that makes the most sense given your strengths. Everyone here has strengths, right? Could be you're strong in everything. Congratulations. Could be you're strong in the humanities. Could be you're strong in STEM. Could be you're strong in a mixture. And the idea is that you want to take the program that's going to look strong for you, but you also thrive and you prove it academically. Alongside transcript is standardized testing. So, oh, it's a great question I'm getting now. Is it better to have a B in an AP class or an A plus in a regular class? The answer is an A plus in the AP class. What do I mean? You have to take the class where you best fit, where you're going to do really well. If you're applying to really selective institutions, they're expecting you in the AP classes to get A's. If you're applying to schools that aren't as selective, I would say maybe be in the regular class and get an A. But it's not like it's automatic. If I take the AP, I'm getting a lower grade. If you're taking the AP and you intellectually belong in that class, do everything you can to get that A. Work really hard, stay on top of your workload, meet with the teacher, find peer tutoring if your school has that, talk to friends, but don't just presume I'm going to get a B. And the converse is too. Don't just think I'm definitely getting an A in a lower class. What if you become lazy? What if you're not as stimulated by the students around you? What if you fall behind because you're devoting more time to the other classes you have? So these are things to think about. You want to be in the level where you intellectually belong and do as well as you can. All right, so standardized testing. So during the COVID era, testing was optional at a lot of colleges, and that's because test centers were not really available. And that became the norm for, let's say, 1 to 2 years. Then some schools started going back to testing. And then the past 2 years, the most selective schools almost have all exclusively gone back to testing with exceptions. 6 of the 8 Ivy Leagues went back to testing. The exceptions are Princeton and Columbia. Johns Hopkins went back to it. Stanford went back to it. Then there are schools that are very highly selective that are not, like U Chicago is optional, Wash U is optional, Emory is optional. However, think about who's in that applicant pool. Students who are in that applicant pool very often are also in the Stanford, Harvard, Columbia, Penn applicant pool, and they're going to need to have testing because those schools might require it. So what am I saying? That standardized testing has come back to being a bit more important than it was maybe 2, 3 years ago. Now there are exceptions, right? A school like NYU, which was historically testing required, pre-COVID, if you're applying to Tisch School of the Arts or to Steinhardt for music or studio art, they cared about the the artistic component as much as the academic component. So if you were a rock star drama major with a great audition, you could have lower scores. They still required it, but they didn't care about it as much. Those schools that are still test optional in the artistic realm, that's real. They still are test optional. However, having very high testing can only benefit you. University of Chicago has something interesting that no other school has, and I wish more schools had it, called testing no harm, which means they're telling you if you want to submit testing, they will determine if the testing can help you, and if it's not, they'll throw it out. Okay? So what is very high testing, someone asks? Depends on the school. Every college reports on their website what their middle 50% is for SAT, ACT testing. So let's say I'm giving an example of a school that says our middle 50% is a 1500 to 1560. That means 25% of admitted students have above a 1560, 25% of admitted students have below a 1500, and 50% are in that 60-point range. You want to be in that range of 1500 to 1560 if you're going to submit. The reason to be below that range, maybe you're a recruited athlete, maybe you have double legacy and the school cares about that, maybe you have some type of special connection, or maybe you're applying for an artistic major and it's not going to matter as much. So you definitely want to submit for the schools that have that type of range within that range or higher. All right. Then when it comes to the test optional schools, I would say this. They look at different components. I've only talked about transcript and testing so far. They look at transcript, testing, essays, recommendation letters, activities. They look at all these different factors. If you take away testing, they'll look at all the other factors with greater weight: transcript, activities, essays, recommendation letters. That is true. However, remember that you're now competing with greater numbers of people who have taken testing and have done very well. So this past year, I'd say, is the first year where I noticed that test optional at the most selective schools didn't carry as much resonance as it used to, because they're so accustomed to seeing very high testing. There are some schools who will flat out say, we love high testing, right? Will they take some kids test optional? Yes, they will. But very high testing can help your chances at those schools: Northwestern, Vanderbilt, Wash U, Emory. I've seen them take test optional kids, don't get me wrong, but I've seen more and more they like very high testing. So that middle 50% is very indicative. For the ACT, it's a 32 to 34. That means you want to be in that range: 25% below a 32, 25% above a 34. There are some schools that might say middle 50% is 33 to 35. That means 25% of kids who submit ACT testing have a perfect score. I don't mean to scare you, just telling you what the reality of what testing looks like. The numbers are certainly inflated because not everyone's submitting testing. However, if testing is going to be a part of your process, and I think for the most selective schools, it's a good idea to consider that, it is okay to think about testing, and you might test multiple times. Now, for a school like Binghamton, some of the state schools, they will take test optional kids, but they're looking at now much higher transcripts than what they may have looked at 6 years ago if you're going test optional. Does that make sense? So the idea when it comes to testing, strong testing can only help you. Weaker testing or more modest testing scores, you can go test optional, but every other component that's part of your application is considered at a much higher level. Okay, so I talked about transcript, I talked about standardized testing. Let's talk about extracurricular activities. When it comes to your application, they let you list up to 10 activities within the common application. That means in school, out of school, during school year, summer, all the different things that you're doing, 10 is the maximum. Now, you shouldn't think I have to run 10 different clubs. They're not expecting you to be a leader of 10 different clubs. And the idea is that there are some commitments that might be much heavier, multi-year commitments, more hours per week. That is normal. You shouldn't feel like I have to have 10 activities. You might have 3 different summer activities after freshman year, sophomore year, junior year. That's 3 things right there. You might have things that you do that you just take for granted because it's just the water you live in. If you're someone who babysits 3 younger siblings with frequency, that's an activity. Family responsibilities is one of the categories listed in the Common App. So if you're someone who cares for an elderly grandparent who lives in your house, that could be an activity. If you're someone who is a leader in your synagogue or church or mosque, that's an activity. So it could be something you've done for 5 years, and it's just something you're used to doing on the weekends. Don't forget to put that. If you're a camp counselor, if you have a part-time job, all these different things count as activities. So it's not just I have to be involved in athletics, and I have to do theater or choir, and I have to do publications, and I have to do community service. It's not like there's a formula of what you have to do. What they're looking for is that you have multi-year commitments to a few different things, and they ask you for hours per week, weeks per year. So if everything is just an hour a week, they're not seeing that heft. So the idea of being well-rounded is a misconception. They're looking for a well-rounded class. Doesn't mean every student has to be well-rounded. So if you have 3 activities that are significant commitments and everything else is a little bit smaller, that is more than fine. Okay? They are looking for things like leadership. Are you president or a founder of an activity? Are you captain of a team? Are you an editor of a paper? Are you someone who leads tutoring sessions? Would being a tutor in my school be considered extracurricular? Absolutely, whether it's paid or unpaid. If you're someone who all your friends count on to FaceTime with the night before a test, that is an extracurricular, right? It might not have a captain title attached to it, but it is something that's part of your weekly routine and something that's important to put down. When it comes to activities, you want to think about the match. What do I mean? If you're going to put pre-med on the application, and we can talk about how some majors are a little bit more common and it's not as beneficial to put down, but let's say you put down pre-med, there should be some STEM related activities there, or some volunteerism, or maybe research. These are things to think about when it comes to your activities. If you're putting down something like engineering, there should be things related to that space. If you want to put down something like English or history or poli-sci, those are a bit more generic liberal arts majors. You don't necessarily have to have a tie into that based on your extracurriculars, but something that's a bit more commonly used, like pre-med, it's good to have the match for that type of department. I have a question about doing a lot of things in the Jewish community, but I'm hearing it's controversial. What do you think? There is nothing wrong with being Jewish. There's nothing wrong with being a pro-Israel advocate. What they want to see is that you are someone who is nuanced. Are you able to have a conversation on campus with someone who might not be pro-Israel? Are you able to be friends with someone who is Catholic or who is Muslim or who is irreligious? So the idea is that it's okay to be attached to your community, but they want to see that you're someone who could write well of being that part of other communities too, and that you're someone on campus who will be a good roommate, floor mate, classmate. And that should come across through your other activities and through your essays. Does being the honor society help? So the honor society, if it's just purely based on grades and there's no other requirements, then it's an honor you could put, there's an awards honor section on the Common App. But if you have to do service as part of being an honor society member, then that counts definitely as an activity. All right. A job is not considered extracurricular, right? No, it's incorrect. Within the Common App classification of categories, one is work, being paid. That is an extracurricular. They have a lot of different categories. So it's publications, it's theater, it's debate or speech, it is work, paid or unpaid, internship, academic clubs. These are all things that fall within the realm of extracurriculars. So that's a really important to the admission process. What I will say is that if you're applying to schools that have a single digit admit rate, Ivies, Ivy Plus institutions, they're looking to see not just that you're involved in your school, you have leadership, but they're also wondering the what else factor. It's almost like, how do you separate? How are you a change agent within an applicant pool that has a lot of people with A's and a lot of people with great scores? So how are you someone who's maybe shaped society for the better? So it's not just I did a one-time food drive in ninth grade. Maybe you're doing something more consistently throughout high school. So the idea is that for those most selective single-digit admit rate schools, to think to yourself, what do I do to make myself stand out within a very competitive pool? I remember once when Columbia had an 8% admit rate, now it's 4%. When it had an 8% admit rate, their admission officer said 80% of our pool is admissible. That means 80% of people applying have those very high scores and very high grades. And they have to whittle that down to 8% admit rate. Why is it that 80% of the pool is admissible? Because who the heck wants to do all those essays if they have no chance of getting in? Columbia has a lot of essays. So the idea is that a lot of these applications are self-selecting. The people who are applying really do have a shot when it comes to the numbers. All right. After extracurriculars, let's talk about recommendation letters. This is an important part of the process. You're going to have one from a school official, which could be your college counselor, could be an associate principal or principal, depending on the school. You're also going to want to ask two teachers to write recommendation letters, preferably junior year teachers, or it could be one junior, one sophomore year. Note that if Barnard's on your list, they don't want a sophomore teacher. That's an exception. But for the most part, a sophomore teacher is okay. English, history, math, science, foreign language are considered the main academic subjects. So they don't want a phys ed teacher recommendation letter as much as they would want English, history, math, science, foreign language. Two teachers who know you well within the context of the classroom. So don't worry if they don't know what you're involved with extracurricular wise. That the school official will take care of. The idea is that they should be able to write within the classroom setting that you participate, you care about the subject, you do your work on time, maybe you help struggling students. So basically you're a model citizen within their class, and they can write about all your strengths as a student within that space. So if you are a junior or about to be a senior, hopefully you ask two teachers. If not, try to do it as soon as you can. A lot of teachers like to write in the summer. Someone's applying to poli-sci. Is it okay to put roles in political organizations, either left or right leaning, or would it hurt? That is a great question. A lot of admission offices are very liberal. That being said, they don't want to have campus just be a college Democrats monolith. They need to have college Democrats, they need to have college Republicans. So the idea is that whatever your political leaning is, as long as you can come across as someone that can engage in civil discourse on a college campus and not feel like your way is the right way and the only way, it's okay then to list your political viewpoints. Okay, so back to recommendation letters. People sometimes say, what if I ask like 10 people for recommendation letters? Does that help my chance? The answer is no. Sometimes admission officers callously state the thicker the file, the thicker the student. You don't want to think that you should have as many letters as possible. 2 teacher letters, 1 school official. Now, if you want to have 1 supplemental recommendation letter, I'm not saying you have to do this, but let's say you've worked for 3 years for someone and that supervisor knows you better than anyone, you can ask that person. Or if you volunteer in a political campaign for a whole summer and your supervisor knows you really well, you can ask that person as well. I just don't want you to feel like you have to find someone now if you don't really have that relationship outside of the classroom setting. Can you ask 2 academic teachers and 1 arts? Okay, so it's a good question. If you're applying for an artistic program, to get 1 letter from the arts could be a good idea. So whether it's drama, whether it's studio art, something in music, that's okay. Okay. Helping classmates can be an extracurricular. It depends what you mean. If it's tutoring, absolutely. Whether it's official or not official. If it's just like I drive someone to school, not really. Or I take the subway with my friend, not really. So if it's helping them with academic not make sure they don't fall behind, that's very helpful. Okay. I asked my guidance counselor for rec letter. They told me their letter would only be acceptable by CUNY. No, colleges are looking for a counselor letter beyond just CUNY. Okay, so let's talk about the essay. There is a common app which allows you to apply to many schools at once using 1 generic form. Most schools that you could think of are on the common app. Exceptions are the CUNY schools. CUNY has their own separate application portal for both Macaulay Honors and general admission. MIT also has their own application portal. And the California system, UCLA, UC San Diego, UC Berkeley, have their own UC system. Okay, so when it comes to applications, for the most part, you're going to write 1 main essay that'll work for all schools. And then schools might have specific supplemental essays that pertain to them. Could be, why do you want to go to X university? Why do you want to study Y? Tell us the community you're from and why that community is important to you. Sometimes students make the mistake of thinking the Common App essay is everything. Supplemental essay, I'll gloss over, I'll get it done in 10 minutes. No, supplemental essay has the same, if not more, resonance than the main Common App essay. The Common App essay is about 650 word maximum. It's okay if you're below that. It shouldn't be 250. But if you're like 550 to 650, that's okay. And that's a personal statement. It's something about you. You can see what the prompts are. They're very pointed prompts. Or you can do topic of your choice and how something resonates with who you are. So it's not writing about grandma. It's not writing about grandpa. It could be that they're a supplemental character to your protagonism, right? It shouldn't be that they are the main character of the story. Don't feel like you have to write a sob story. Don't feel like you have to be funny if you're not a funny writer, right? You want to be yourself with this process. When it comes to the essay, don't use ChatGPT. ChatGPT can help you maybe brainstorm, maybe help you even outline. Colleges can submit your work and note if it's ChatGPT done or if it's your authentic work. You also don't want to have anyone else write it for you. The 17-year-old voice sounds very different from the 37-year-old voice. Whatever your parents might want to do to insert themselves in this process, they should be cheerleaders here, not the main character. All right. You don't want them to have main character syndrome. This is you as a senior applying to colleges. So, main Common App essay is really all about you. Supplemental essay is basically why you're a good match for that school you're applying to. It's almost like your love letter to that school. Here's why I love you and why I want you to love me. Okay. So if you're writing about a why Chicago, and their supplement means the world to them, it should be that you really understand their school culture. So it's not copy and paste Chicago for Columbia. They want to know that you really understand the nuances of their traditions and their core requirements and their academic calendar and their buildings and their student organizations. All these different pieces will comprise a very good why Chicago essay, not just you're a really good school, you're hard to get into, you have great academics, and I love your ranking in US News and World Report. You haven't told them anything, right? So the idea is you get really specific. If they say, tell us the community you're from, why it's important to you, it is okay to state your religion or to state your geographic background or to state your family's immigration, where they came from. Don't feel like my story is derivative. I don't want to write about it. It's okay if you are Jewish, if you're from a foreign country, if you are Catholic, if you are Muslim. It is more than okay to write about that. The idea is that you're being able to express why that community is important to you and how you're going to give back to community when you're on a college campus. Michigan wants to know with their community essay that you're going to contribute to their community in a very meaningful way, not just go to classes and go cheer on the team at the stadium. They want to know that you're going to get involved in student organizations and you understand the culture of the campus is far beyond Greek life and football stadium, right? So these are things that are important to note when it comes to supplemental essays. Columbia asks, list all the books you've read for pleasure, exhibits you've seen, films you've viewed, podcasts you've listened to. If you're just going to write Sports Illustrated, congratulations, you just got denied from Columbia, right? So the idea is they're looking to see through that type of question how intellectual you are. How do you pursue academic things beyond just what your school requirements are? Harvard asks the question, list all the different intellectual pursuits that you have taken under throughout your last 4 years. That means maybe taking a summer class. That means maybe doing research. That means maybe doing different fellowships, not just I do school and then extracurriculars at night. They're looking for deeply intellectual endeavors to see that you're going to match their school's culture. Okay. Question, how important is it to take AP calculus in high school if I'm not going into math in college? Know that I don't want to do well in the class. It's very important that you do well in class. That's the most important thing. If you're applying to the most selective schools, they're looking to see you're taking the most competitive curriculum. Let's say you don't have AP Calc, maybe you have AP Stats instead, but maybe you have a more impressive AP list in the humanities, social sciences. Colleges do note certain APs are stronger than other APs. For example, AP Calc, Physics, European History, English are considered stronger APs than AP US or Comparative Government, AP Psychology. Nothing against those classes. They're wonderful classes. Doesn't have the same cachet as those aforementioned APs like Physics and Calculus and European History. Okay? Can I explain the process of audition? Auditioning means that you might be applying for drama and maybe you have to have an audition as part of the admission process. You have to look on each school's website to see what their process is. It might have to be in person on campus. It might be able to be a recording that you could submit. It could be you have to do one monologue and a song. You have to see what their requirements are. But for a school that has a specific arts college, like NYU is Tisch School of the Arts, that audition is carrying as much resonance as the academics. Okay. Liberal arts education. You could be a double major in a liberal arts college. You could be a double major of mathematics and biology if you want, but it doesn't necessarily mean they have an engineering school or a business school or an education school. Okay. If you're applying to college with a single digit acceptance, is it possible to stand out from other applicants with higher grades and test scores if you're slightly lower? It's a really good question. It's very hard to be the outlier when the transcript is the first foremost thing they look at. If you have one hiccup and you can explain it, great. But you can't have multiple years of hiccups and expect to get into a school that has a 5% admit rate. Unless you are a recruited athlete to that school. They want you to play quarterback. They want you to play shooting guard. Or it could be that maybe you have triple legacy and the school really cares about that. So the idea is that when it comes to the most selective schools, first and foremost, transcript is carrying the most weight. All right. The view on AP computer science for applying to engineering school. That's excellent. But they look at physics and chemistry and calculus a little bit more than comp sci. Okay. Okay. So next thing I talked about essays. I want to talk about interviews. Interviews have become less important for the majority of schools. There are colleges that don't offer it anymore, and there are colleges that have optional interviews. Optional means they expect someone to take them up on it. Why not you? Right? The idea with an interview is that it's not going to be the reason you get in. Your grades, your scores, your activities carry more resonance, but it's another nice write-up that can go into your file. Typically, an interview is conducted by an alum who feels a connection to the university. So it's not going to be a reason you get in if you have a B average and you want to get into an AA plus type of school. So I hate when people say, I'm going to have the best interview ever, and that's why I'm getting in. it's not going to carry that much weight, right? The interview confirms everything else that's great about you that can give you a chance of getting in. There are some schools now that have stayed away from interviews and look at optional videos. Wash U, Duke, Brown, Chicago are examples. That video, again, doesn't make up for transcript or testing or activities, but it gives them a window into you that maybe they wouldn't understand elsewhere. And they give you different types of prompts that you could think about and incorporate into your video. They're not expecting it to be made by Scorsese or Steven Spielberg or James Cameron. It's meant to be student-made video, like using your phone and as opposed to a tripod and film equipment. But the video is carrying a little bit more weight than an interview at some of these schools. But again, the interview is just a small piece. It's not a major component when it comes to admission. Then there's miscellaneous factors. I mentioned if you're a recruited athlete, that's a really important thing. Most people are not recruited athletes. I don't want you to feel like you're competing with 95% of the applicant pool. It's not like that. But recruited athletes have a hook. So a hook is something that gives you an edge that maybe the rest of your application is just generic, but this is something that's going to give you a little bit of a step up. Some schools that could be having triple legacy. Both parents and a grandparent went to a school. Some schools have shied away from that in recent years, actually. It could be a recruited musician in the marching band. Maybe you're going to play an instrument in their band and they need that tuba player. That could be helpful for you to have a better chance of getting in. Another example of a hook is applying for an underrepresented major. If you are someone who wants to do pre-med, that is not underrepresented anywhere. But if you're someone who wants to study the classics and you studied ancient Greek or you studied Latin, so the idea is that the match makes sense, that can give you a better chance of getting in than just putting undecided or just putting English or history or poli-sci, which so many students are putting in. Nothing against putting that in, but if you do have a hook that you want to lean into, it can't hurt you. These days, males putting econ and comp sci are a dime a dozen. Pre-med, both male and female, a dime a dozen. Tons of people are pre-med, tons of people are going into comp sci and economics. So it's okay to put that down, but I don't want you to feel like that's going to help you stand out in any way in the admission process. All right. Next, when it comes to the other examples of miscellaneous factors that colleges look into, they look into things like, are you the first generation to go to college in your family? That's a benefit. Are you an international student? That is a benefit. As of June 2023, race is not considered anymore per the Supreme Court decision. But if you can elucidate on diversity through your supplemental essays or your essay, or maybe through your activities, colleges still want to build a diverse population without it being a checkbox on the common application. So those are still factors that they're considering. It's not the reason you get in, your transcript's still carrying the most weight. These are different things that they're paying attention to. Finally, when it comes to the financial piece, I want to mention that colleges look at the FAFSA. That's the free application for federal student aid. That is something that parents should be filling out based on prior year's income. And the FAFSA is going to come up with an estimated financial contribution figure. The federal government's going to say, we think your family can contribute, making up a number of $20,000 to your education. That means a private school is $90,000. The goal is, can they come up with $70,000 to meet that difference? The schools that have larger endowments will do what they can to meet that need. Some schools might say, you know what, we can come up with 50,000, but you're on your own for another 20,000. That's a lot of loans to absorb because 20,000 times 4, right? Colleges will look at the FAFSA. Some schools might look at something called the CSS profile, which is a College Board form on the College Board website, taking into account things beyond just income figures. Some schools might have their own financial forms that's on their websites as well. Chicago has their classic financial form that's solely theirs. But that's something to think about when it comes to the admission process and financial aid, is that I've heard students say, I don't want to work in college. I don't want to get a job. Work study is a common form of making money as a college student. I did it working at the admissions office. You could do it working at the library. You could do it working at your dorm in the front desk. You could do it working in your dining hall. It is okay to work when you're in college. Actually, the highest GPAs on campus are the work study kids. Why? Because they care about their education the most. Their supervisors work on campus, know to give them time off during midterms and finals. And they're locals. They don't have to take a half-hour commute to get to their job. They're right there. So the idea of having work study, I think, is very important. You might be offered scholarships and grants, but you also might be offered low interest loans. Those are things to pay back after college, and low interest means that it's not going to be a private lender that's going to try to raise the interest rate an exorbitant amount. The low interest loans as part of a financial aid package are meant to make it more doable to pay back over a number of years. Okay, I'm seeing a series of questions coming in. What if your transcript isn't exactly the best, 4.0, but individual classes have Bs, but you have a good SAT? There are plenty of colleges that are going to want a student with very high testing. Why? Because they'll see there's a lot of potential there because the SAT, ACT is meant to be a indicator of freshman year success in college. The most selective schools will still want a strong transcript with that strong testing. Plenty of schools will want someone with very high testing, even if they have a number of Bs. Okay. Is it better to submit an SAT of around 1400s or just go test optional for NYU and Columbia for the JTS? Okay. 1400s is not a score you want to submit to NYU anymore. I wouldn't submit anything below 1500. For Columbia JTS, that is their dual degree program with the Jewish Theological Seminary, 1400s is worth submitting. How about a psych major? Is it one of the common ones? Psych is definitely a common major. I would say psych, bio, history, English. These are the more economics, more common majors. There's nothing wrong with listing it. I just don't want you to feel like it's a standout in any way. Pre-med at certain schools is disadvantaged. I would not put pre-med for Johns Hopkins or Wash U unless you've done like advanced research. You have like real pre-med exposure as a high school student because a lot of their campus, about 40% at Hopkins, about 33% at Wash U, start off pre-med because those are two of the top 10 hospitals in America for med school. If my mom was transfer student and has an MS degree from CUNY, am I considered first generation? If a parent has a bachelor's degree, then you're not considered a first generation college student. So master's also, you wouldn't be first generation. Okay, are there other questions? Or Francis, do you have questions for me?
Yes, I do. I do. Everyone, I just want to take a moment to tell you that I'm about to ramp it up. Everybody, Michael and I have it's a game we invented. It's called Fact or Fiction. So everybody, get ready, buckle your seatbelts. We're going to play a few minutes fact or fiction. Michael, do we have a hard stop at 9? Can we do 9:10? Is that okay?
Sure, whatever works for you.
Okay, everyone. So I'm going to pretend. Is everyone ready? Ready? All 65 of you? I'm going to pretend that I'm you. A know-it-all. I know everything. Ready? Children, everyone pay attention. I'm going to pretend that I am an all-knowing, omnipotent, I know everything. I am 16 and I know everything. Is everybody ready for this? Ready? Ready? Here we go. Queller, my plan after I get into college, I'm going to tell every single teacher what I really feel about them. And I hate them. I hate them all. But after I get that acceptance letter, they are all going to know that I hate their guts.
Good question.
Fact
So
or fiction?
So you don't want to do that. Fiction. Every college acceptance comes with the condition that you maintain the same academic standards that got you in. So let's say you had a great 3 years and then you tank senior year because you got into college. You might lose your seat at that school. They could put you on probation. They might send you a warning letter. But if you really tank and your grades go down significantly, you might have your offer rescinded. So make sure you have great relationships with your teachers throughout high school and beyond. They can be helpful for you after you graduate too.
My plan is to get all A's in math because I am a genius at 16. My plan is to take pre-algebra, 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 and get 100, 100, 100, 110.
Right. So it's a fictional way to look at things because curricular rigor counts as much as grades, especially at the more competitive schools. So that means that if you want to just pad your GPA with straight A's, the lowest level, there'll be some schools who want you, of course, but the more selective institutions are looking to see strong curriculum.
My plan, because I'm a genius at 16, didn't you know, is to apply early decision to 6 different schools. Fact or fiction?
So it's fiction because your college counseling office will only send out your transcript and rec letters to one school for an early decision. You're also signing in the application that I'm only applying to one school. Your parent is signing that you're only applying to that school, and so is your school counselor.
My plan is to pay someone to just write my application, fill everything in. I'm just going to cruise. Someone else is going to do the whole thing. I'm not even logging into Common App.
So I'm going to speak to parents. Ethics are very important in this process because your kids are watching your every move. So if you feel like you're going to do everything for them or pay someone to do everything for them, you're basically saying to your kid, I don't have faith in you. And you're kind of saying to them, it's okay if you cheat as you get older. Be very careful with this. A lot of people feel like they have to hire people left and right to do everything for them. Your kid's very capable.
My plan is to have my grandma, my booby, write my college recommendation letters. Who knows me better than my grandmother?
Right. So recommendation letters, school counselor, and two teachers. I'll tell you a fun one. Dartmouth actually allows a supplemental letter from a peer. So the peer rec letter can come from a good friend who knows you really well. That's a nice exception. For the most part, it's really two teachers, school counselor.
My plan is to visit the admissions office every single day. I will stalk them. I will haunt them. I will email them. I will set them an easy text like Queller. I will send them reminders every hour.
Okay, so the fact is it's okay to network. The fiction is to over network. So the idea is that if an admissions officer visits your school and you send them a thank you email, that is great, but you shouldn't have an email question every single day thinking now they'll remember me. So the idea is that it's okay to have some contact touch points that are minimal. It shouldn't be that you are stalking someone who has thousands of people on their radar.
Fact or fiction? I'm applying pre med because I'm a future doctor and I'm going to take no AP science at all.
Right. So pre-med is one of those things where if you're taking the risk of putting it on your application, the match has to look strong through activities, through an AP in bio and or chem or physics. So the idea when it comes to pre-med is so many students are listing pre-med that you can apply without listing pre-med and still be pre-med once you're there. It's not like you have to put it on the application to then pursue that advising track as a freshman.
Queller, you are over exaggerating. I'm already taking AP bio. Why do I need to take a college class that covers bio? And then I'm taking so much bio, and you're just giving me way too much bio in my life. It's too much. If I'm taking AP, why do I also need a college now class?
Okay, so the reality is it's a very competitive admission pool for the more selective schools. So whatever you can do to maximize your academic ability is worth considering. Now, if you're not good in biology, don't be taking AP biology and college biology classes just because you think it looks good. If you're going to get C's, it's not worth it. But you all have academic strengths. So to be able to think about how do I accentuate those strengths in my school environment and potentially outside of school through extracurriculars, through summer class, through research, that is something to think about.
My plan is to lie on my college application about my SAT scores. By the time they find out that I lied on the self reports, I'm already accepted. What are they going to do? Unaccept me?
It's a great question. Okay, so in recent years, the admission offices now allow you to self-report your SAT, ACT, AP scores, IV scores on your common application so that you don't have to have the College Board or ACT send the scores and that costs money each time. But what happens is whichever school you matriculate with is going to want to see the official report sent from the College Board or ACT to confirm what you put in your application. So if you lie about anything, that's then going to be proven false. You just lost your seat.
My plan is to take AP garbage. AP garbage 1, AP garbage 2, and AP garbage 3. There, I have my APs.
So the good news is no AP is garbage. However,
Garbage.
for the more
Well,
competitive schools, certain APs look stronger than others. So as I was saying before, like I love AP Psych, AP Gov. It's not looking the same as AP Physics, AP Chem, AP Euro, AP English. It's just the reality. So for the most selective schools, taking some of the stronger APs can only benefit your application.
and this is the last loaded question. This is the most important question of the night. The best way to study for the SAT is to get a good night's sleep. This lunatic Queller Prep, have you heard of them? They have a summer camp, they have an SAT program, 6 weeks, 4 days a week, 4 hours a day. She's crazy, this woman. What, get rid of her.
Okay, so you can't really cram for standardized tests the week of or the night before, just get 8 hours of sleep and have a good breakfast and boom. Just like if you're an athlete and you have a basketball game, you have to work at it for a long time to be really good at that game. If you're a thespian and you have a big play, you have to work on your lines for a long time to deliver a great performance. The same is the case with standardized testing. Some students could do it on their own. They could do Khan Academy online. Some students might need a one-on-one tutor. Some students might need group classes. Some students might need a real structured program like what Queller Prep has to offer. So the idea is that you know yourselves best. If you feel like you could study on your own, I know very few kids who could do that, who have done that. God bless, that's amazing. Most people, though, do have to prepare in some capacity to do very well on standardized testing. Um, I have to say that when it comes to testing, it's one of those things where you put in a lot of effort and you do the best you can, but I don't want you to feel like it's a label. Like I have a 1430, that's something that's gonna be stamped in my head the rest of my life. It's not like that, right? The idea is that you do the best you can. It's for a college admission process. And I don't want you to feel like if you don't score as well, that you're a failure in life. Do the best that you can within the best of your abilities, and there'll be college options if you're someone who's worked hard and done well in high school.
Everyone, we are concluding the webinar. I want to take a moment. Please type a huge thank you. This was extraordinarily last minute in many ways. So I want to take a moment. Everyone, please type a thank you into the chat because this very last minute webinar yielded, I think, 69, 70 people on a same day major attendance record. I am so proud of you. And I really want to share that all of the students who joined, this was a great high energy. You do not disappoint, Michael Courtney. This was a great webinar. We got so much content, so much knowledge, so much out of it. And as I said in the email, Michael Courtney has come in person to Queller Prep, and look at the performance. Performance, Zoom, look at that high energy. I really have to say, equally impressive. Really a wow, 5-star, 10-star, 150 stars. This was great. Everyone, at the end of the webinar, something I really like to do, and many of you know this, I like to take everyone off mute to say thank you. So I'm going to count to 3. If everyone could take a moment and just keep saying thank you. I love this moment of unity. 1, 2, 3. Thank
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. This was super interesting, impressive. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Michael, thank you. This was a great webinar. So much knowledge. This was officially Everything College. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night and happy upcoming last day of school to all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you again. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to everyone. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.